Welcome to Inside Independent Publishing with IBPA. I'm your host, Christopher Locke. I'm also the IBPA Director of Membership and Member Services. Okay, so one of the most effective ways to set your book up for success is by creating an organized, detailed, and strategic marketing plan. So, President and founder of Media Kit Buzz, Brian Feinblum, joins the podcast today to share expert tips about the most important aspects of a book marketing plan, pre-publication, during publication, and post-publication, including what your budget should be, best practices for marketing through email lists, social media, advertisements, and much more. All right, well, welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I want to start with a general question.
Sure.
It's always interesting to see what are some of the biggest mistakes in general that you see publishers make when it comes to their marketing plans?
Ooh, wow. Well, certainly some obvious things. One is some publishers, I would say, don't have detailed marketing plans, and certainly many publishers will miss their own deadlines and steps along the way. I would say a lot of publishers, on average, don't involve the author as much as they should in terms of giving them actual advice and guidance, helping them to understand the schedule as well. I talk to many authors who will tell me, whether they're published even by a big five or small press and indie press, they all seem to complain that they sometimes feel like they're in the dark or they weren't told something, and then all of a sudden, boom, where's this, where's that? And time has been squandered. So I think time is your friend initially when you first decide that you're going to publish a book, then it becomes the enemy of many.
Okay, very cool. So in terms of creating a marketing plan, we're going to go through, as I said, one by one in terms of the publication process. But I want to ask, if someone's putting together this document, what are some of is there a general layout, the elements they should include, like budget, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about the obvious. So you have a book that's coming out. You have to certainly understand what is the marketplace for that book and what's needed to reach that marketplace. So you have a divide and conquer strategy. What will you as the publisher do? What will the author do? And so that takes communication. And so some of these things overlap. So for instance, obviously a publisher should have their own website and do certain things from their website, but an author should be encouraged to have a website as well. I think that's important for a lot of reasons. The same thing with social media. The publisher has his or her own social media for the company, and the individual author should be on social media doing their thing. So there's a lot of things in tandem. Speaking engagements. A publisher can be out there speaking in general about their books, sometimes specifically about something that's going on with their company. An author should be speaking about their book. So the marketing plan, you have to think about, you're right, in terms of time, deadlines, working backwards from the publication date that you'd like to publish the book in, coordinating with editorial, figuring out when is really the ideal time to even release the book. And there are times where I find that authors and publishers, maybe because they're behind, they all of a sudden release a book right in the middle of a time when it's probably not the best time to release that kind of book. Mm. So it really it's about a lot of forethought, thinking ahead, and breaking it down into all kinds of elements: social media, traditional media, advertising, speaking, website, mailing lists, the pricing of the book, giveaways, book awards. There's a lot of things that one can think about, and it comes down to what can the publisher do, what can the publisher guide the author to do, and what kind of resources do they need to give that author.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's go through each of the different aspects of publication. So let's start with before a book's published. So one of the most important aspects of this part of the process is to make sure that the publishers define the marketplace and then they have a targeted reader for that book. So what are some tips for that part of the process?
Yeah, so I'm always surprised when I talk to certainly authors, while I ask them, who do you feel is your targeted reader? And sometimes they feel stumped by that. And to me, it should be obvious. You should have an idea as to who likely would be interested in this type of book. And then you have to figure out, as a publisher and author, well, where do we find those people? Where do they exist online? What groups do they belong to? What websites do they read? What publications do they subscribe to? And or what events do they attend? How do you reach your targeted group? And I think for publishers to be successful with marketing, it probably helps them if they can stick to a focused number of genres that they publish in, right? If they become too broad or general, then you're publishing a lot of one or two books in each genre and 10 different genres. And I think that makes it hard as a publisher to learn how to break into each of these markets and there's not as much synergy between the books and the authors. Even something as simple as getting testimonials, advanced testimonials and blurbs for a book. It's the responsibility of the author, but the publisher, if they have a stable of authors or connections, they can help get someone to blurb some of their own books. But if you're spread thin in terms of the genres, it makes it very hard.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned genres, so I want to ask, another part of this process is to make sure that you're doing comparative review of other books in that genre. So, are there certain tactics that publishers should be doing during this research? For example, do they need something like BookScan? Should they just be going to retail sites and looking at other books? What do they do to do this research?
I would think initially, I guess the question is, why is one a publisher in the first place? Why did they even get into what they're doing? Some may be authors or former authors. They have the creative side. They have a passion for books. But now you're thrust into the business entrepreneurial side. So it's going to depend on the individual as to what kind of research they'll need to do. But you're right, in terms of the marketplace, I try and think very specifically along demographics. So if someone says that they're publishing, let's say, a romance book, so we know, according to the market, 75 or 80% of those that buy those books tend to be women. And then, of course, within romance, there's a difference between, let's say, erotica or LGBTQ or some other kind of romance book. But you can start to get a feeling for, okay, so which book fairs, which national shows, which writer associations pertain to this genre. Romance in particular is a very popular genre, but some genres are not as popular, right? So for each one, you have to look and see. Yes, you can go online. You can look at sales. You can look at bestseller lists. You can look at a lot of places and try and draw conclusions as to, what are other people doing to reach their marketplace. But I think it breaks down more into the tools. So every author should have, and every publisher should have a website. There should be a plan to speak somewhere, at a minimum to bookstores and libraries. But maybe there are other groups beyond that one can go to. There are places that authors should think about in terms of social media, that you're not just posting a cover of your book or making it book-centric. Think of it in terms of a topic. Can you become an expert at something? This is true for the publisher as well. Can they see themselves as an authoritative figure, a voice on a genre, a trend, or some aspect of publishing as a business? So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Yeah,
it's
no.
easy.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Yeah, that's good. So I want to see you've mentioned the email list, social media, things like that. So during pre-publication, I wanted to go through each one to see what a publisher and the author should be doing during that part of the process. So let's start with email marketing.
Yeah.
So we know that email marketing is a very powerful tool still, and I wanted to see, how should people be creating this list pre-publication? Because the bigger the list, the more people you're going to be able to reach.
Sure. So, I think publishing is on a time spectrum, that there are times where you get very busy and maybe there's a little bit of a lull, but you're constantly doing something. So let's say as an author and a publisher, you're constantly trying to build a mailing list. This goes on for life, really. So it's like paying into Social Security. The more you work, the more you'll get paid later on when you retire. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing here. And I do it for myself as a marketer. I'm constantly creating lists of publishers and literary agents and authors and groups that I can connect with to get referrals and clients, etc. So it's never too soon and it's never too late to build these lists. So for authors, if they have a website, certainly by giving something away on their website that would draw people in is a way to capture their email, right? So call it an incentive, a bribe, what have you. There are some authors, maybe this is their fourth book. They may be even willing to give away their first book for free as a hope that that's a magnet or a draw to get readers and to get their emails. So you're doing both. You're getting their emails, you have it that you can reach out to them, but the giveaway itself, the quality of that content could inspire people to actually want to follow you or want to buy your book or want to see what you've published. So you're building this list, and once you have this list, you're constantly trying to expand it. So you may even ask people or give them an incentive to share a name or two with you if you give them another freebie or something else that you can give away that they may be willing to share with their list of people. A few years ago, over the years, we've developed bestseller strategies, and you hear this all the time. But whatever the list is, whether it's Amazon or something big as the New York Times, the idea is that you're trying to build a list of people who can stay loyal to you, that they like your writing, they believe in what you're doing. So the list, it's a constant thing to build up these lists.
Yeah, well, let's talk specifics about your book. So, when should you first send that first email about a book that is going to be coming out? 5 months before it's published, and then what's that content? Because I'm assuming at that point you may not even have your cover done.
Yeah, it's a good point. As much as you want to do things in advance, I don't know that sending out an email about a book that people can't buy or touch for 5 months is going to be helpful. I mean, I just think for myself as a consumer, if I hear about something and I get excited, well, then what? I can't do anything with it. You're planting a seed, but I don't know if that's worth bothering someone for. I think you're better off trying to engage people just with your content in general, stay in front of people, but once you start promoting something, I think you have to be prepared to soon be able to deliver. So I wouldn't do an email 5 months out. I think what you're trying to do is build those emails to a point where, well, at a minimum, you'd have to have the book available for, pre-sale, right?
Okay.
So some publishers are slow on that in terms of when do I put the book up for pre-sale.
Yeah.
But once that goes up, then I guess if you're 6 weeks out, a month out, perhaps that would be the time that I would say to start doing emails to your customer base.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about pre-orders in terms of timing. Like, how long is a good amount of time for someone to set up a pre-order to be then giving yourself time to then be doing things like this, pre-publication promotion?
I think a rule of thumb, having something up for pre-order, if you can, as far back as 3 months before the book is supposed to be released. But in terms of what do you do with that or how active are you, I think, so let's take an author who, if they already have a book, so we're not talking about their first book, this could be their second or third book. So they should already be active in promoting their existing books, and hopefully the upcoming book somehow is related, at least by genre, if not directly because it's a sequel or something. So they're continually speaking somewhere, they're continually promoting on social media, they're doing all kinds of things to try and get awareness for their books, hopefully. So when they have a pre-order available for the next book, it's great because if people look them up, it'll be discovered. If they want to start pushing it, like I said, maybe a month or 6 weeks before the release date, that might make sense.
Okay. And so then let's talk about social media. So before publication, what
Yes.
should you be doing online in terms of things like LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all the various sites? And you're welcome to, talk specifically about each site, and also fiction versus nonfiction may be different.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. It depends on the site, the genre, a lot of factors. So you're asking in terms of what should a publisher do or what should an author do, or both?
The publisher, what should a publisher be doing before? And it may be the same where you say, well, make sure it's ready for pre-order, and then you can, what should people be doing?
So I think it depends on the kind of author that you have. The hope is that the publisher, before they sign an author, they have someone who not only is presumably a good writer, but that has some sort of following on any of these social media outlets. They don't all have to have 100,000 or 1 million people. I mean, that's not the easiest thing to do, and people are writers, they're not always marketers. But you want someone presumably that already has some sort of familiarity, that's already on several platforms. But if it's not the case, then your job as the publisher is first to quickly get your author up to par. Here are some of the platforms you should join. Here's how to use them, kind of thing. The publisher may not know themselves how to use them so well, but we can't have ignorance driving ignorance. We need to come from somewhere. So either the publisher is driving this bus or the author. No matter what. So in terms of the social media platforms, I think at some point, obviously you run out of time. There's endless amounts of content that you can create for social media, between videos and reshares and posts and articles and blogs and podcasts, even podcasts like this. There's only so many that you can do before you saturate the market that it doesn't lead to anything. So I don't believe in just posting for the sake of posting, but you should get to some sort of regularity of posting. And I think it's the voice that you post in. So as a publisher, your goal is to promote any book that you have, and whether one sells 1 million copies or each of them sells 10,000 copies, it doesn't matter to you as a publisher. Your goal is to sell as many books of as many copies as possible. Your hope is that each book does well, and and that they reach their maximum potential. But as a publisher, your goal is to promote the line. So I think your social media as a publisher is not always geared towards an individual book, but more geared towards the line. So you make comments. So let's say you publish historical fiction, and maybe you have several books that relate to World War II historical fiction. So rather than promoting just one individual book, perhaps you're just talking about the topic of World War II, or how it's portrayed in fiction, or why are we still interested in this. And you can mention some of your books or mention your website, so at some point someone goes on to check this out. Or maybe you offer some sort of giveaway or freebie that relates to one of those books. So I feel like you're promoting in bunches as a publisher. And authors trying to usually promote a specific book, usually the current book or the newest book, but the same thing. They would love to sell their backlist. They're not against selling older titles. So I think in terms of the platforms, you have to pick which ones make sense for your genre. Mm-hmm. So something like TikTok presumably is for younger people. It's very visual. If the author's not going to be as active on some of these platforms, and you have to think about that as well. I think Facebook still is one of the best platforms because it's still the biggest. It has a group function where you can reach out to targeted groups of people who could be your potential readers. If you go on Facebook, you can just, look up fans of thrillers, fans of historical fiction writers, etc. They're out there. And I think the groups are most valuable because each group, their membership could range anywhere from a few hundred to tens of thousands, sometimes even more than that. And that's where you want to be. It's not so much posting on your own Facebook page, but posting to these targeted groups. Something that, you have to balance it between it being commercial and being something of substance. And I think that's where you try and talk about more the topic than a specific book. So it doesn't look like you're blatantly pushing a title, but of course the goal is to get them to your website.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's talk about media. So your book's not published yet. At what point should you be reaching out to the media to do things like set up podcast interviews, get articles written, maybe even TV interviews? When does that start?
Sure. So each medium, I think, has its own schedule. So if you're looking for straightforward book reviews, hoping that whether it's a blogger or a newspaper or an online version of one, most of them work in advance. So I would say you're about 4 months before your scheduled publication day. For sure, you have to reach out with an advanced copy of your book or a digital copy of your book to major book reviewers, whether it's a trade publication like Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, etc., or a major newspaper, New York Times, etc. People want to be notified about 4 months before. If it's a radio interview or a podcast, I would say you can reach out to them starting 2 months or 6 weeks before the book is out, because it'll take you a few weeks to start to get some yeses from these shows. And once they say yes, they can schedule anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks out after that, which would coincide right around with the time your book is being released. I would say the first 3 months of when your book is out are the most important in terms of the media activity, but you can continue after that. But the first 3 months, the book is new by all standards. And in terms of reviews, just to go back, if you don't send it out about 4 months before, you've lost that opportunity. You can't you're not going to get reviews if you send a book out, when it's published. It's too late already, unfortunately. You might get feature stories, you might get interviews, you might get byline article opportunities, but reviews for sure, 4 months before, 3 months before, that's your chance. If you're trying to reach something like a major magazine, like a women's magazine, if the book is appropriate, you might have to reach out 5 months before the book is being published. Television is usually not that much lead time, except for, let's say, the major morning shows. And that's only for like really best-selling authors or people already with a big name, so a Penguin Random House would approach the Today Show and show their catalog and say, this is what I have coming out in 4 months, pick whichever celebrity or bestseller you want, which is different than, the struggling independent publisher trying to convince, a major TV show of an unknown author, hey, you've got to pay attention. Television, I'd say, is the hardest. But radio and podcasts, there are plenty of good shows out there. And so you can reach out to them even after the book's been published as well. Online media, there are certainly paid book review opportunities that are worth doing, as a lot of authors and publishers are discovering. And those paid opportunities, even though you can do them after the book has already been published, I would say if you're going to spend the money, do it before the book is published. Get that advance blurb onto the cover of the book. So, I mean, something like Kirkus Reviews, you can contact them many months before the book is supposed to be out. They take sometimes between 3 and 7 weeks or 3 and 8 weeks to get a review to you. So if you can get it back in time, you can put it on your book, on your Amazon page, your website, your social media. So doing more things like that in advance is a good idea.
Okay, cool. And then what about advertising? I just want to mention IBPA does have a program called the Media Outreach Program. So I recommend people check that out. It's a good way to connect with a lot of like a few thousand media all at once. Let's talk about advertisements. So pre-publication, are publishers doing things like Google ads, Amazon ads, or is that something you do more during like publication?
Yeah, I think it's something you do more during publication.
Okay.
And it's going to also be dependent on what's attached to it. So, for instance, there are authors that I suggest, unless you have, let's say, a number of books in a series, let's say 4 or more books that relate to each other, doing something like a Google ad, Facebook ad, Amazon ad, you generally don't recoup your investment from the one book that you're trying to sell. The goal, of course, is that the people who do buy the book, if they like it, they'll go back and see what else has that author published. So I'd say for ads, it would only be for authors that have a fair number of books that are out there, books that are connected to each other, if not directly in a series, at least just related. Otherwise, I don't believe that the ads will help you as much. There are people who do things like boosting a Facebook post. It's inexpensive, and that could be worthwhile. But the pay-per-click ads, especially for fiction or poetry, short stories, essays, those are really hard to convert, I believe, into a payoff. The ads that I think that are worth doing, if you want to call them ads, would be the paid book reviews. I mean, they're technically reviews, but you're paying for it. And I would do things like BookBub, and there are some similar sites like BookBub where you pay several $100s and they promote the book deal of the day. Your book is discounted. Things like that could pay off, but advertising, I think, to some degree is limited. It goes back a number of years, I've worked at 2 small book publishing presses, and back then we were doing ads in magazines and publications and the like, and it was very hard, even for an author that was somewhat known, for the ad to really pay off. Most publishers and authors have been talking about this for decades, that the ads, although they sound like a good idea, for most people it doesn't pay off.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, BookBub. So there's like giveaways. So you can also do Goodreads, Fussy Librarian, and NetGalley recently launched Booktrovert, and IBPA has actually we just launched a bundle with our NetGalley program and Booktrovert. So people should check that out. So those are some good ones that people can also do. Would you do that type of giveaway before publication or during publication?
Yeah, either one. You can certainly do a giveaway near publication, but before, and you can do it, and you can do it during. I really think it's connected to whatever else that author's written or whatever else the publisher has published. To me, ideally, a publisher, I know they may have limited budgets and time, but the more books you can publish and the more books you can publish in a targeted genre or several genres, it'll have a payoff, because on average, you're going to see, right, you're only going to make so much from one title, and hopefully make a profit. So if you can just repeat and rinse whatever it is that you're doing, good, bad, or otherwise, to make that profit, then it makes sense. But when you publish, let's say 5 or 10 titles a year, and if the genres vary, I think that's probably the hardest point. It's that those first few years when you're starting out and you're putting a lot of emphasis on just a handful of books, it can be difficult.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure we have time for some of the other aspects of publishing.
Yep.
So let's talk about during publication. And can we define that concept of, so obviously there's going to be like post-publication. So like how long do you consider this during publication time where you're marketing the book?
Yes, I think your launch date, the day that you actually release the book, that begins the clock. I would say up to the first 3 months. Even bookstores look at it that way. If bookstores take your book, have your book on the shelf, if they order it, they'll let it sit up to 6 to 12 weeks, and then if it doesn't sell, they automatically return it, generally speaking. The media, any kind of news media, generally considers something new, certainly the first month that it's out, but even into the first few months. They're fine with that. So those first few months, I think, are critical. So leading up to your launch date, you want to do things that will take place post launch, right? So you'd reach out to bookstores before the book is out with the idea that you would speak once the book is out. Some bookstores are fine in terms of they'll take a book that's been out 6 months. If you're a local author, or if it's a relevant topic, or if it's something that seems to be hot or trending, they're willing to have you come and speak. So some things have short time spans and some things have longer time spans, but the hot time of those first few months if the book is out. Once you get past 3 months or out, or depending on what time of year you're in, now your book suddenly feels like it's a backlist title, even though it's not old yet. Everyone has their own feel. People feel like for the first year, whatever you do, the book is new, and then after that, it's old. Others like me will say those first 3 months, 3 to 6 months is a really important time because everything builds from that during that time period. And if you find that what you're doing is not working those first 3 to 6 months, unless you dramatically change course or start doing things that you haven't been doing or do things better, the remaining time as the book gets older, it gets harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're doing things like your email marketing and your social media posts and you're telling people about this book, where are you sending them? Is it the website or is it a particular retail site or all the retail sites?
So as a publisher as a publisher, you would know perhaps where you make the most money. In other words, all things being equal, would you make more money if it's sold through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever? Is there a retailer that you're trying to get more sales to? So the hope is that they'll do more things for you in terms of co-op money or other ways of placing your books. So I guess as a publisher, you would have to know yourself where would you ideally want people to go. Some publishers will try and sell the books directly on their site from the publisher. I mean, the publisher would get the order and then fulfill it. And of course, this way you eliminate the middleman. But I think most people don't buy that way. They buy from a source that's familiar to them, where they'll give their credit card to Amazon. They already have an account, Walmart, BN.com, Apple, etc. If they want to support their independent bookstores, bookshop.org, etc. But the publishers should still try because they make much more money if it's sold directly to them. And the authors also, if they want to fill an order and try and sell it directly, they'll make more money, but I think it's unlikely. So you are trying to guide them. You're trying to guide them to your site and guide them to different options. So on whether it's the publisher's website or the author's website, they should see multiple ways they can buy this book. Mm-hmm. It won't be all the ways, but let's say a half dozen of the biggest ways to buy a book.
Yeah. Well, and then when you do things like your email list and social media, something that publishers worry about is like they don't, like you were talking about that concept of like overselling something.
Yes.
Like how many times are you posting about, during this publication process about this particular book, or like emailing to people about it without it feeling like people are like, okay, I know it came out. I'm not interested, or I already bought it or something.
So I think if you have good content, the least effective post is just saying this book is out. Here's a link, go buy it. I mean, you do that once, maybe when you launch the book, but after that, I think you want to draw people in based on the topic or the genre. So, for instance, going back to the groups, if you were on Facebook and you sent something to a group, it wouldn't just be buy my book. It would be, here's a blog post that I just wrote. Here's a link to a post about a topic that relates to what the group is interested in. So maybe an author writes something about, why there are no heroine, why there are certain types of heroines that are missing from romance books today. And of course, that'll be the kind of book that the author presumably wrote. So the post on social media is to promote the blog post. The blog post exists on the website of the author. When people go to the blog, they can see the books, or even at the bottom of the blog post, you could say, your author is such and such book, and here's where you can buy it. So the social media posts shouldn't really be so much about buying the book. It's go read or look at something that relates to this topic. And that's why people make videos. That's why people reshare content, or they celebrate some sort of special day. They need an excuse to post, but it can't be just buy my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Well, so let's talk money. A lot of publishers have limited budgets, and I'm trying to figure out how they're going to allocate money for these different parts of the process. So pre-publication, during publication, like, are you like, is it literally just the exact same amount for each section, or are you putting most of your money in the pre-publication part of the marketing? Like, how do you split it up?
So I've seen some publishers, the main factors, one, they may match what an author does. So sometimes an author will say, hey, or the publisher may approach the author and say, hey, if you hire a publicist or put $5,000 into it, we'll match you, or we'll spend, or some portion of that. So that'd be one. Can you incentivize an author to get publicity help or outside help, and perhaps the publisher will be willing to put some money into that. Two would be, I guess, the potential of the book, right? So you would know or have a feeling for, based on the marketplace, the author's ability to promote and get out there. If an author comes to look, I have a mailing list of 3,000 people, and I speak at these different groups and do X, Y, and Z, you might feel, okay, this author could sell a certain number of books, so it'll be worth it for us to put some money as well into this. But if you're really uncertain, or if your gut tells you, all right, maybe if all goes well at the end of the year, it'll sell 1,000, 2,000 copies, I would say the publisher would not want to risk too much of an investment on this. It's sometimes a wait and see. Even with the bigger publishers, they wait to see how something's responding, and if the author, whatever the author committed to do or promise, actually comes to fruition, then the publisher will step in. Look, there are endless ways to spend your money, and I, as a promoter and marketer, I know, there are many things that someone can hire me to do. The more important thing, I think, for the publisher is to spend money on their infrastructure. So, for instance, if they know they're going to publish 10 books in a certain genre, then whatever you need to know about that genre, if let's say there's a mailing list that you can rent or buy, like I know IBPA does mailings to libraries and the like, something like that might be worthwhile, because then you can promote really your whole line and not just one book. Or by promoting one good book, people will see the rest of the line. So things like that would make sense. But if you just look at a book and say, maybe we'll do an ad for this and we'll do something random for that, I think you may just be throwing your money away. Generally speaking. When I worked at a publisher, I took to heart what the authors were saying they're going to do, and I was looking for evidence that they were actually doing it, or that they're in the position to do it. Because everyone will say, I have this many followers, or this many fans, or I know someone's neighbor knows Oprah, this kind of thing. A lot of that usually doesn't pan out. So you have to go with what's concrete and what moves the book. The publisher would be in a better position than the author to see what's been working. Like, they'll know, okay, if I did this review or I did this promotion with BookBub, what did I get from it? And sometimes we overanalyze based on just one thing, if something's going to work for other books. Sometimes you have to try it a second or third time and take in whatever factors you can into consideration as to whether this will always work, or it's only a lucky one-time thing that made something work.
Well, is it a surefire bet if your neighbor's son's brother's dog knows Oprah, though? And that's,
Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of that,
Well, what is there an amount that, because again, people have a limited budget, like,
yeah.
What's a reasonable amount that, like, a small publisher can spend on a book? Is it 1,000, 5,000? Just to give kind of like an idea.
Yeah. So when I first started in this business a little over 30 years ago, the rule of thumb was that a publisher would spend $1 per book on promotion and marketing. So if they thought a book would sell 5,000 copies, they put $5,000 into their promotions. However they used it, whatever they did with it, including various mailings and whatever costs are associated with marketing a book. Now I think publishers, they make less of a profit per book, and they sell fewer copies of a title. There are more titles out there, and books are still being sold, but less per title. So I think the publishers have to be conservative. But look, they would spend $1 million if they thought they'd at least get back 1,000,001. So the amount. Yeah, look, the amount I would say go slowly. So, for instance, for authors, there are things that I do with authors that can cost $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and if they start to see results, they'll reinvest. There's no reason off the bat to say, let's put $10,000 into a book. I think that'd be way too much for a small press to entertain. And you have to think about, well, what am I spending the money on? It can't just be, here's a budget. What do I think is worth doing? Do we need to spend a lot of money handing out free books? Do we need to be at a certain conference or show displaying this? Is it really worth doing a certain kind of ad? you're choosing a lot of things, and everything has a price tag attached to it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we've been talking a lot about, the kind of like the idea that the marketing plan's going really well in terms of like the production of the book is just everything's going well. Like, so I
Yeah.
want to see if, let's say, that, like a book was supposed to come out in December and suddenly it's getting delayed and won't come out till, spring. How does somebody adjust their marketing timeline to make sure that everything just doesn't get thrown out of whack?
Yeah, no, good point. It happens all the time. Many publishers are delayed for any variety of reasons. So obviously, some things may have already been set in motion. So the question is, why did that book get delayed and when? The book that was supposed to come out in December, did the author find out in September, or did they find out November 30th that the book's not coming out in December? Because you may have already started to get things in motion. So the hard part would be is, what if you started doing things and now everything got pushed back? You have to kind of redo the same things that you had been doing. In other words, if there was something you were going to do, 2 months before the book was out, and you started doing it, but now the book won't be out, you're going to have to do it again. If the book's coming out in March, you're going to have to start in January the things that you planned on doing 2 months before the book was out, etc. So it could be frustrating. Of course, the important thing is communication. The publisher should know relatively, if something is holding up a book. They know how many books they're giving to an editor. They know how they're going to print the book. They know cover design. If they see that they're falling behind in certain parts, and it becomes wider and wider, then they should switch their publication date sooner than later, rather than trying to catch up. It does mess up the timeline of things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, are there like, does the media or is anybody like sometimes they'll just be like, cool, we're not going to do it now because it's late. I mean, like, what?
That's a good point. No, they won't. So it's not so much that it's late, but they may have given a yes based on the timing of the book.
Mhm.
Like there may have been a reason why that book was supposed to come out in November. Maybe it had something to do with Veterans Day or Thanksgiving or annual, some other honorary day or week, or it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month or something.
Mhm.
And now it's coming out 4 months later when that kind of vibe or connection doesn't exist. So that's possible that they'll cancel. And just scheduling factors. I've had authors, unfortunately, they got bumped for breaking news or something happens. And then when you try and reschedule, that's it. You missed your window.
Mm.
It's not the publisher's fault. It's not the author's fault. But it's an example of, yes, when it comes to the media, it's whatever is in front of them at that moment that they think is important, they'll go with. So, yeah, it is unfortunate. So, sure, rule of thumb, don't have delays.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, well, I want to finish off with like a helpful concept, which is you've talked a lot about how authors and publishers, should be both doing things. So I just want to see, are there any helpful tips for the publishers out there, how they can set up their authors for success to make sure that the book is going to, just hit
Oh,
it out of
yeah.
the park?
Absolutely. I mean, first, I think the publisher should try and think like the author, both in a good way and a bad way. In the bad way, think, okay, this author maybe just not aware of things. Maybe they have certain fears or insecurities. Maybe there's certain things that they really are good at and certain things they're not good at. You want to know early on, what do you have to work with in terms of this author? What are they really willing and able to do? And you're looking at their time, and you are trying to see if the author is willing to spend some money and to guide them as to how they should spend their money, if they're willing to in fact invest. You can create content for them, to help them. You can create their press releases. You can give them some help on social media. You can let the author know, hey, we know these type of conferences or book fairs exist, based on your location, or if you're traveling, you might want to consider seeing if you could speak at these conferences or display your book there. So give the author, I think the publisher's role is to give the authors information and incentive to do something and guidance to find out right away, what does an author actually know? And what they don't know, you want to try and get them up to know what's possible. Even something as simple as book awards. You may think, authors may think it's up to the publisher to submit for book awards, and to some degree it seems that way, but the publisher may not have the time or the money or the knowledge of all the book awards that exist. So I think if the publisher can convey to the author, these are things that you should be thinking about. Here's when the award submissions time opens up, which is, a certain time of the year. You can try and also guide the authors so they don't waste their money. Some authors think, oh, I got this email and they're going to do this, this, and this. And the author doesn't really understand what the offer was. It sounds good. Mm-hmm. And then the publisher's like, no, that's not going to do anything for you. And you're just going to waste $800. Mm-hmm. it's not even so much that it's a scam, although there are many email scams out there. It could be a genuine email, but the service that's being provided just is useless. So I think educating their authors is really important.
Yeah, and working as a team. I mean,
Working as a team, exactly.
yeah, it's, and keeping each other like abreast of like everything that's going on so that,
Mhm.
but like if a author hires a publicist, probably you should let the publisher know, these are the
Yes,
things that I'm
absolutely.
doing with them. And so like you were saying, like the idea that they're not like doubling up the efforts and wasting, marketing money where it doesn't need to be spent.
Absolutely. Look, the author has a blind spot. They love their book and they only know about writing. They may not know as much about marketing or understanding that there is actual competition out there and there's a marketplace. And that's competing with books. Publishers are competing with anything that exists online, any kind of product or service or entertainment that exists out there. You're competing with it. So books are still special. I love books, and I'm glad to see that the industry is still doing well. But there are many challenges, and each author and each publisher, they do have to collaborate in a way that they know what's going on and that they can help each other. The worst is when an author just assumes a publisher is doing something or expects them, that they have a certain attitude about, no, my publisher should be doing that.
Mm.
Maybe not, maybe not.
Absolutely. Brian, very helpful information. I really appreciate it. Thanks for going through all this. I do
My
want to make
pleasure.
sure that people check out bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com. That's your blog. It's excellent. It's got many, many great reviews over the years, won awards. So definitely check that out. Also, you have a special offer for publishers that are listening to this episode. So you said that you would interview publishers for your book marketing buzz blog. You just have
Yes.
to email Brian. And, unlike me, Brian said it's fine to give out his email address. So it's brianfeinbloom@gmail.com. I'll put it up on the screen for the YouTube version. But yeah, and if you have questions for me, again, it's brianfeinbloom.com. You can email Brian and send me all the good comments, Brian. And also I want to make sure, I did mention a few of the IBPA book marketing programs. We do a lot to help our publishers get the word out about their books. So everything from the media outreach program, we have a NetGalley program for the reviews, and you mentioned libraries. So check that out on our website, ibpa-online.org, and then go to the tab. It's called Programs and Products. Well, I hope everybody does an incredible job, listens. You'll get a sensational book marketing plan if you listen to all of Brian's tips. So thanks again. Please subscribe to this podcast. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere you download podcasts. It's the last Thursday of every month. Thank you again, Brian. Really appreciate it. And I just wish everyone the best of luck with their book success.
My pleasure, Christopher. Thank you.